It's Enemy Sidelines presented by Microsoft. It's my good friend JP Shadrick of the Jaguars Radio Network joining me once again. We spoke in week one. Here he is again, JP. How's it going here in the final stretch of the season?
Well, it's going, Deepi. It's always good to be with you. 2-11. You guys know the feeling. It's not a good one. The Jags, unfortunately, have had this feeling a lot over the years. This one's coming with a little more headlines around it and some drama and some bad offense thrown in there as well. So there's a lot going on here. It's going the wrong way right now. But a month to maybe try to salvage something in the form of a winning result. They haven't been able to do that lately, though.
Well, the Texans, they beat the Jags in week one. So what is the mindset of this Jaguars team as they head into Sunday's matchup at home against the Texans, especially after coming off of a shutout loss against the Titans just the week before?
Yeah, step one is just to move the ball efficiently and then somehow score points. They were shut out for the first time since 2009 last week in Tennessee, and they were held under 200 yards total in the game for the third time this season and now in back-to-back weeks. So the offense just feels worse than it's been all year. Offensive line is having some pass protection issues, at least they did last week. Certainly on the interior, the guard play was not ideal against the Titans defensive line. And then the receivers on the outside have had issues throughout the season, consistently finding a way to get open, especially down the field. And then the running game, they got away from it. They only ran the ball 8 times, 7 of those by running backs for a total of 8 yards last week. And it was a 10-0 game a lot of the way. They just got away from it a little early, and it's the lowest production in the rushing game in the history of the franchise last week. So they've got to figure it out. They're at their best when James Robinson is fully healthy. They give him the football and then give Trevor Lawrence that security blanket at least to fall back on. But it's just felt like lately they haven't really been able to figure out an attack in the running game, whether it's bringing a guy off or they fumble the ball some. They've got to get that figured out if this offense is going to improve, I think, down the final month.
All right. Well, a lot to unpack there, JP. Let's start with Trevor Lawrence. He threw 4 interceptions and threw the ball a ton against the Titans. But it seems like he had a stretch of games in October where he showed progress. What have you seen from him over the course of the season since we faced him in week one?
Yeah, he was really good, actually. He had ratings above 90 and was doing all that. And then, like we said, the running game changed when James Robinson got hurt. And that was in Seattle not long after the week 7 bye week. That's when this offense just started to go down a little bit because it was more on Trevor's shoulders. And as we said, they've had some wide receiver issues trying to get open consistently. And as it's gone, he's trying to protect the football, and he does do some things very well. This past week, though, there were a couple balls that you couldn't claim are not his fault. Laviska Shenault dropped one, and it was tipped up in the air and intercepted. Another one, similar situation, but 2 times, and he said it in the post-game press conference last week, it just made bad decisions, or the linebacker jumped back and made a good play on it. But the 4 interception day, that's the reason why. They were trying to fight back in that game. They gotten away from the run, and it turned out to be a tough day at the office. I think there's still a lot of hope and optimism around Trevor Lawrence. The statistics have not shown it lately, but if you ask the guys in the locker room, they still believe in what he can do and what he has done on the practice field and has the ability to do in games, and leadership in the huddle and on the sideline and everything. So make no mistake, he is the franchise guy. He's going to be here. His face is plastered all over town. It's just a rough little patch now, I think, in the second half of the season for him.
All right. Well, you mentioned James Robinson and the run game, and the run game is so perplexing for the Jaguars because when you look at their numbers, they're averaging over 100 yards per game. They had 198 yards rushing against Tennessee the first time they played them, and then just the 8 yards, like you mentioned, on Sunday total for the team in the run game. So it's the same backs. James Robinson is back in the game. What's been going on with him? How do they get him the ball more and get that run game off to where it was just a few months ago?
Well, as Tony Baselli said on a show earlier this week, if you're going to be dedicated to the run, you've just got to be dedicated to the run. Even if you're down 10-0, You might get 2 yards, 3 yards, 6 yards, 2 yards, but you have to just maintain it and do it. And they just haven't done that. Honestly, in the play calling, they just haven't handed the ball off to him. Now, it all started when he had that heel and knee issue in Seattle. He hasn't really been 100% since then. Then there was the fumbling issue a couple weeks ago. He had fumbles in back-to-back games. There was the question, did you bench him for 16 plays in the Rams game? And then the next week he fumbled the ball early, second play of the game, and didn't play for the next 20 plays. It was into the third quarter before he got a touch again. The question for Urban Meyer was, did you sit him down? Was it injury related? There were some different answers early in the week on that. And it turned out, later to find out that, they did kind of bench him. And got to hang on to the football because of the practice issues with the injury surrounding it, not being able to be on the field a lot. He's off on Thursdays now, trying to get right. Urban said, hey, we haven't been able to practice a lot of that, holding onto the football, gripping it properly and all that. So there's a move back to some of the fundamentals behind that. We'll see if it works out down the stretch. But at the end of the day, if they're going to run the ball, you got to run the ball. And they haven't really done that a lot just in the calling of the plays.
All right. What about this defense? Just 6 takeaways for this year, 5 interceptions, 1 fumble. They're last in the league. What do you have to say about this defense and why the lack of turnovers and takeaways? And has that been their biggest issue this year?
Yeah, I think that's the one thing they obviously wish they would have had more of is takeaways. They've had some opportunities, especially early in the season with the ball in their hands, dropped interceptions, things like that. Shaq Griffin had 2 or 3 that I can think of off the top of my head, and earlier in the season. But as a whole, the defense, I think, has improved as the season has gone along. Last week was their second best yardage day allowed all season. I mean, they, not that Tennessee is, throwing it all over the yard or anything, but hey, considering what's going on right now, to give this team an opportunity in a game like that was a big deal. So, they have made some adjustments in their coverage from earlier in the season, moved to a lot of zone. They were playing man early in the season more. They switched that. And since that switch, things have improved. Joe Cullen has settled in now, I think, as a defensive coordinator for the first time in the NFL. He's been in the league forever, but it's his first year calling defensive plays. They have an identity. They're going to play well against the run. That's the idea, at least. And they're going to bring heat. They're going to blitz you, and they're not just going to sit back there and rush forward. They're going to bring different blitz packages, and they may not execute all the time, but hey, they know what they are. And there are some individual guys that have improved as the season goes, as the season has gone along. And then last week, Trevor Lawrence throws 4 interceptions. On those sudden change situations, the Jags defense allowed a total of 21 yards and only a field goal to keep the game somewhat within reach. If there was any offensive production at all, Jags are right back in the game. That's a big part of it in the second half. So that's been a bright spot, I think, relative to what we're talking about. A bright spot for the Jaguars, the defensive play. As the year has gone on, you know what they are, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say there obviously are bright spots, but sometimes hard to see amidst a 2-11 season. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Urban Meyer. It's been tough for him both on and off the field. And I saw that the Jags owner, Shad Khan, met with him earlier this week. What can you tell us about that meeting and why it took place when it did?
Well, there was those reports last weekend that came out, Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, and NFL media, of tension from the coaching staff and the players and the assistant coaches. And well, yeah, I mean, they're 2-11, 2-10 at that point. So there's certainly tension, and they're just trying to work through it. I think Shad Khan he sees the headlines too throughout the season and the off season and now into the regular season that has happened that aren't football related. There's a lot of those that have happened so far this year. And Mr. Khan is a patient owner. You got to remember, he gave Gus Bradley 4 years around here as the head coach. Doug Marrone got 4 years as the head coach here. They didn't win a lot of games really with either one, with the exception of the one AFC championship game run back in 2017 under Marrone. But in those points, okay, they weren't playing well. They had rebuilt the roster. It was kind of as he said this week, Mr. Khan, the lowly Jags, nobody's dealing with you. Okay. Well, now it's the Jags aren't playing well, and there's all this off the field headline drama that goes with it. The balance of that we'll see in the next few weeks, if Mr. Khan has a decision to make, if he wants to, if he's going to ride it out and give it a shot. Do they believe that this can be built properly? There's still at least belief from Urban Meyer that can happen. So that was a conversation, and I think the conversations are ongoing. It's not the only time they've talked this year. They talk a good bit, but considering all the headlines lately, it's of note.
All right, good stuff. JP Shadrick, as always, final matchup between the Jaguars and the Texans on Sunday. Looking very much forward to it, JP. Thanks so much for the time.
Always, Deepi. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and go Texans. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell for new content.